As you can see from the timeline, we have a lot to talk about, because Genshin Impact 5.2 was simply amazing. And I'm not talking about the unexpectedly short Archon Quest interlude, from which we just learned that Capitano's name begins with TH, that he was the Sentinel Knight, and that Ronova was the one who took action in Caria to prevent the people from destroying the world. Which means that Ronova, just like Sasti, can also use those cubes, and it's probably a power every shade has. In the Archon Quest they didn't even show us Capitano's face, although I think there's just a skeleton under that mask. Anyway, today we're gonna talk about Och-Kan Natlan, so we're going to embark on a journey across the millennia of history of Natlan, but first, this is a theory video and leaks are prohibited in the comment section. I will use information available in the game, but my theories and conclusions are not to be considered the official lore of the game, unless I got something right and is confirmed in a later update of the game itself. That being said, I will split the history of Natlan in 6 chapters: Xiuhcoatl's era, Xbalanque's era, Och-Kan's era, the Scarlet-Eyed Youth's era, the Cataclysm, and the Adventure Team / Bona's era. To conclude, there's a theory on Mare Jivari, one on Xbalanque, and one on the Sage and the Golden Entreaties. Alright, grab your kukuik and let's start the video. When the Heavenly Principles arrived, Xiuhcoatl, the Pyro, or better yet the Phlogiston Dragon Sovereign, together with the other sovereigns fought against them in a sky war, but as we know, the Heavenly Principles won. The world was reshaped as they saw fit, and they brought or created a new breed of humans to populate their new version of Teyvat. These humans were barely capable of wielding the elements, and differently from the dragons, they were incapable of evolution, so they changed the world to fit their needs. After an unknown amount of time, but before the nails descended, the dragons decided to acquire forbidden knowledge, seeing it as the only way to defeat the Heavenly Principles, and this is probably when Xiuhcoatl got corrupted beyond recognition, turning into a black and purple dragon, and having lost his mind, he fought against the Heavenly Envoys, the angels who had been tasked with guiding the humans. During this fight, many angels lost their lives to Xiuhcoatl's flames, and he even burned down the Natlan Irminsul tree, severing the ley lines as a consequence. Because of this, one of the last angels barely standing, Xiuhcoatl, together with the Shade Ronova, the ruler of death, and a few other angels, used the few surviving leaves on that Irminsul tree to create the Night Kingdom, a network of memories similar to the ley lines. I think this happened around the time the Celestial Nails came down, simply because in the Night Kingdom there is one, and considering they were sent down to fix the collapsing world, it makes me think that Ronova sent down and used this nail to aid the Lord of the Night in the creation of the Night Kingdom, which fixed the issue of the severed ley lines. Because the ley lines had been severed, all the memories of the humans that were living in Natlan were completely lost, so the humans reverted back to savages, and with the angels now extinct, they had no one who could guide them anymore. Now, this passage is a little bit cryptic, not gonna lie, but according to the Sage of the Stolen Flame, Xiuhcoatl faked his death, only his grey corpse shambled on, so the dragons knelt before the throne and the ancient civilization of the dragons began to deteriorate, using violence to prove the might of the dragonkind. One of the dragons, Och-Kan, couldn't stand their folly anymore, so he decided to look for a way to save them elsewhere. He stole Phlogiston, reason why he was later known as the Sage of the Stolen Flame, and in the wild he found the now uncivilized humans. The Sage decided to use them as test subjects for his experiments, especially because of their unexplainable courage before anything, giving them the power of evolution that once belonged to the dragons alone and that the Heavenly Principles didn't want them to have. He created Pacha, the floating island in the Metzli area, and he created a new civilization completely independent from the Night Kingdom. Chak, the first human to join him, learned how to use Phlogiston, which he then taught to the other humans. Despite the Sage's apparent good intentions, his goal was to merge the humans and the dragons to produce a new kind of being, the savior of two worlds, that would have defeated Xiuhcoatl and become the new Phlogiston sovereign. I'll let your imagination run wild on how the Sage began mixing the two bloodlines. Anyway, eventually Chak and his, I guess, 5 companions defeated the Raging Dragon and founded the first tribe of Natlan. It isn't clear who this Raging Dragon is, but I think it's Och-Kan, because he is later described as standing in a stagnant void, but also because the dragons never noticed what the Sage was doing. Maybe Chuck and company realized that the sage wasn't a good guy? Anyway, as the years passed, Chuck's companion naturally died one by one, and on Chuck's last day, he followed the call of a mysterious voice in the night and climbed the mountain where the ancient temple of the Science of the Canopy lies. There, he called forth his dead companions, and the Lord of the Night responded, reconnecting the nation and its people to the Night Kingdom. So the Wyob was born, and considering that Wyob is a consciousness of collective thought, I still believe Chuck and company became the Wyob. Moving on to the next era, the special being Och-Kan was waiting for was finally born, Och-Kan. He had the soul of a human and the body of a dragon, and as a direct descendant of Xiuhcoatl, he bore the Flame Lord's blessing, so Och-Kan decided for him to be raised among the humans to learn from them and evolve. Och-Kan foresaw that Och-Kan, the strongest among the humans, would have created a new tribe, and with his companions, he would have defeated Xiuhcoatl, received primal fire, and ascended as the new phlogiston sovereign. As a consequence, the dragons would have finally forgotten about Xiuhcoatl's dreams and bowed down to him, and through his human knowledge, they would have further evolved, taking over Natlan once more, acquiring the power to defeat the abyss that neither the gods in heavens nor Nibelung have. Out of nowhere instead, Xbalanque appeared, a human that neither Och-Kan nor the Lord of the Night were able to foresee. Xbalanque decided to defeat Xiuhcoatl, so he embarked on a journey to find people who share the same goal. He first met Lianka, a woman raised by the Cuckosaurs that later founded the Flower Feather clan, in which humans and dragons could live as equals. Next, he found Och-Kan, who for whatever reason had been imprisoned. He freed him out of compassion, and Och-Kan joined the team. Next, they met a young reckless youth from the Science of the Canopy, Xiuhcoatl, that was challenging anyone he met in the woods. Och-Kan quickly defeated him, Lianka couldn't help but laugh, but in the end he decided to join the team as well. Next, two twins, the brother Ahpub from the Collective of Plenty and the sister Xiuhcoatl from the Children of the Echoes, finally found each other again and joined Xbalanque's team because their parents died because of Xiuhcoatl. From a tiny village protected by the dragons, later known as the Masters of the Nightwind, came Dinga, the attendant of the Holy Sovereign. Long story short, the dragons fled into dreams to escape the war, and they struck a deal with this village. They would have built a labyrinth of mirrors and a fortress of mist to shield the village, and in exchange the humans picked a young girl who had her ankles mutilated at birth as the Holy Sovereign, tasked with guiding the dragons in those dreams, which also doomed her to live a very short life. Having foreseen that Dinga would have joined Xbalanque and defeated Xiuhcoatl, which would have broken their pact with the dragons, she renamed him as the fated Sovereign Magan, and asked him to come back and put an end to her suffering, but also to establish a new pact to bring true peace to the village. Lastly, from the people of the springs came Uenuku, a young man who made a pact with an Oceanid, Ianeira. She would have helped him fight in exchange of the chance to purify the water from phlogiston. Since both wanted to defeat Xiuhcoatl, they joined Xbalanque's team as well. So did the war against the dragons begin. To help the soldiers, Och-Kan learned to use the phlogiston engravings. Xiuhcoatl instead obtained and used Turnfire, which blinded one of his eyes. Ianeira sacrificed herself to save Uenuku, and in the end both Xiuhcoatl and Xbalanque died. In the afterlife, Xbalanque met Renova and forced her to write new rules in the Night Kingdom, so they owed a resurrection, the ability for a human to ascend to archonhood, and then he borrowed part of her powers as a last resort against the Abyss. So Xbalanque came back to life, he became the first Pyro Archon, and he met Och-Kan Uba-Kan. They turned Xiuhcoatl's eyes into the Golden Entreaties, and the two made an oath to ensure the coexistence between dragons and humans, but also the possibility to activate Xiuhcoatl. Xbalanque took one of the entreaties and buried it under the monument in the Final Paradise, and Och-Kan took and swallowed the other one. After that, Xbalanque and Och-Kan founded the Grand Alliance. They built the city of Och-Kan above the ruins of Chichen Uchtoka, and in the end Xbalanque entered the Sacred Flame, leaving Natlan in Och-Kan's hands while waiting for a successor to appear. The next era developed in the 40 years or so after Xbalanque entered the Sacred Flame. At first, things were fine. Och-Kan followed Xbalanque's rules about coexistence, but he not so secretly despised the dragons, and he eventually changed. He loved Xbalanque so much that he never accepted anyone as his successor, and soon his selfish desires took over, so he turned against the Saurians and many people followed him because they still remember the evil dragons that once oppressed them. For example, Ahpub tried to force his twin sister to hand over the Tepetli swords, but she still wanted to be true to the oath they made with Xbalanque and turned him down. Ahpub pointed his weapon against her and accidentally disposed of her, and out of regret he threw himself into the incinerating fire. In the meantime, Och-Kan sent people to investigate Chichen Uchtoka, the ruins of the ancient dragon civilization underneath Och-Kan Natlan, and they found out that they were deeper than they imagined and completely submerged. So Och-Kan recruited people from each tribe to work in the ruins and uncover their secrets, but the Flower Feather clan didn't really agree. Lianka's heir, out of ambition or greed, convinced Och-Kan that she was a threat, and that he needed to send his men to get rid of her. Lianka defeated the army Och-Kan sent, her treacherous heir included, and then used her arrow against herself as a way to show that she would have never bowed down to anyone. Having lost their master, the Flower Feather clan felt lost, but they still followed Lianka's ideals, so one of the elders expelled from the tribe a young man who wanted to protect the Saurians, so that Och-Kan wouldn't find him. In the meantime, in the ruins, the workers were initially treated fairly and they were happy to work, but then their condition worsened and they started hearing a voice commanding them to kneel before the master. Och-Kan thought that they had simply been overworked, but when he went into the ruins, he met Xiuhcoatl, the Type L self-regulating overseer array integrated processing unit, basically another ancient dragon device with a consciousness like Kuhula-Hau, only she was the ruler of Chichen Uchtoka, and from now on we will call her Ixtlel because I'm never saying that full name ever again. Och-Kan, of course, was disgusted by her and the way she called him the Fated Sovereign, most likely because of Xiuhcoatl's blood, but he endured it because he needed to learn how to use the ancient mechanisms of the city that she commanded. She also told him about a ladder that climbed up to the firmament, so hopefully we're getting a new spiral abyss in Natlan, some kind of weapon that could tear something to pieces, maybe the fake sky, something that fell from the three moons, which could be the fragment we found in Natlan, meaning that the broken thing in the sky might have been one of the original moons of Teyvat, and her research about wishes and something else, maybe ambitions, the principles behind the visions. Och-Kan, fed up, decided to strip her of her authority. He tricked her with memories and imprisoned her into the massive statue in the old core of Xiuhcoatl. He most likely used her authority to build the legendary Tonatiuh, but in her memories, he also found out about the power of the Abyss that, for some reason, he defined as a power within human comprehension, capable of destroying the enemies of Natlan. Och-Kan then forbid the people from claiming kingship. He had to be the one and only ruler of Natlan to prevent what happened with Remuria and with the city-states of Sumeru. And he also forbid the people from praying to the Night Kingdom, so that the traitors would stay dead. Then he took a few privileged people, among which Xiuhbanque, who didn't agree with Och-Kan, but he also didn't want to turn against the only companion still alive, and he became the Grand Alliance Ordnance Officer. Lastly, Och-Kan used the source mechanisms and unleashed the Abyss all over Natlan, sealing Och-Kan Natlan off in order to protect the human seed of hope. He believed that this was necessary to preserve the nation Xbalanque fought for, and that the casualties would have eventually decreased as the humans slowly adapted to the abyssal powers. Imagine if he met Renee and Jacob, how tragic that would have been. Anyway, obviously things went wrong. The Abyss penetrated into Och-Kan Natlan, and Och-Kan sent his men to incinerate everything and everyone infected, which gave the city the name of Cinder City. He then split himself into three parts: his mind that he sealed into the new core of Xiuhcoatl to command the mechanisms and save the people, and his dragon body and human soul that eventually got corrupted as well and turned against himself. When the people realized that the human king that was leading them against the evil dragons was an evil dragon himself, they all turned against him, looking for a new Archon to defeat him once and for all. During this rebellion, Och-Kan visited Och-Kan to show his disappointment, but also to recover the second Golden Entreaty. Och-Kan didn't care about the humans, while Och-Kan still believed in their hopes, so fully aware that the sage wanted to wipe out everything in Natlan, humans included, and that only the enhanced dragon-human mixed breed would have survived, he preemptively sealed the entreaty on the Tonatiuh, preventing the sage from retrieving it. Now, remember the guy the elder of the Flower-Feather clan expelled from the tribe? He was the Scarlet-Eyed youth, and since that day, he traveled across Natlan to form a team to defeat the Python King, Och-Kan. He met Xiuhcoatl from the Children of the Echoes, the twin brothers Atahualpa from the People of the Springs, and Huáscar from the Collective of Plenty. He convinced Xiuhpanqui to fight to defend Natlan once more, and they tracked down a mysterious craftsman from the Masters of the Nightwind, Manku, who worked in the waterway facilities where he later was sealed in and barely escaped the flames that burned down the city, losing half of his face as a consequence. The plan was simple. Manku would have deactivated the furnaces in the hollows around Och-Kan, cutting the power to the city, allowing Xiuhpanqui as the ordnance officer to bring the heroes to the royal hall and fight Och-Kan. At the end of the battle, Och-Kan, the draconic body that is, was defeated, but he clearly didn't die, and only the Scarlet-Eyed youth, Xiuhcoatl, and Atahualpa survived. The Scarlet-Eyed youth then emulated Xbalanque, so he decided to die, and the Lord of the Night and the Wayab recognized him as the new Archon, bringing him back to life. In the end, he asked Xiuhcoatl, just like Manku did, to erase his name from history so that the people would understand that anyone could become the Pyro Archon and lead the nation, and then, just like Xbalanque, he also entered the Sacred Flame. Around 2500 years later, the Cataclysm happened. Mawika found Tenoch, who had been expelled from the Masters of the Nightwind and lost his ancient name, and convinced him to recruit 6 heroes: Wanjiru, Menilek, Sanhaj, Burkina, Sunjata, and Tupac, to fight against the Dark Tide on the Lonely Island, later known as Mare Jivari. Before they had been recruited, some of the heroes had already been told about the Cataclysm by the Lord of the Night. Tupac was bored to death because, despite his massive build, he had nothing to fight, so he decided to swim without a destination in the ocean until the Lord of the Night stopped his crazy adventure and told him to train harder for the catastrophe that was about to happen. Sanhaj instead, who by the way also had an incomplete soul like Auroran, was forced into a prophetic dream that showed him Xbalanque's oath to his warriors, the Scarlet-Eyed youth defeating Och-Kan, and then the Cataclysm and his own death. Menilek instead didn't receive any heads up. He straight up disobeyed the clan chief who tried to dispose of Ungobo because of its Flame Lord's blessing, and instead healed it and departed on an adventure that led him to Tenoch. Anyway, the heroes fought against the Abyss, and one by one they all died. Sanhaj, for example, was a border master, so he was able to expand or summon the Night Kingdom. With this power, he created a miniature Night Kingdom together with Tenoch and made it go kaboom, repelling the monsters of the Abyss, turning the tide of the battle but losing their lives in the process. Mawika, the only survivor, then brought them back to life except for Tenoch because he didn't have his ancient name anymore, and devised a plan to save Natlan 500 years later, and to preserve her remaining lifespan she also entered the Sacred Flame. The last era we're talking about today began 10 years after the Cataclysm, when a group of adventurers decided to go to Och-Kan to find the Jade of Return, an artifact supposedly capable of wiping out the Abyss. The members of the team were Kopan from the Collective of Plenty, Legba from the Science of the Canopy, Titu from the Children of the Echoes, an unnamed mountain ranger from the People of the Springs, Taika from the Flower-Feather clan, and the young Liryu from the Masters of the Nightwind. Quenin might have been a part of the expedition, but I'm not 100% sure about it. In the end, after leaving the terrified Liryu in a safe tower, Copan, Legba, T2 and Taika reached the Tonatiuh, where they realized that the whole legend was a trap. The Jade of Return was a completely different and dangerous object, but it was too late and either Och-Kan, the Draconic body, or actually Xiuhcoatl put an end to them. Liryu ended up being the only survivor of the expedition, so she had Och-Kan being marked as a forbidden area and took it upon her to spread the tale of the adventure team, so that no one would forget about them. Fast forward, I suppose, like at least 16 years, and Taika's daughter, Bona, who was born right before he died, became an adventurer and decided to complete her father's adventure. She sneaked into Och-Kan and was welcomed by the dragon that attacked her. Because of that, or thanks to that, she ended up in the core of Xiuhcoatl, where she used the pyrophosphorite chunk on herself, releasing a special beam from inside the core that she named Kokuik, unaware that it was Och-Kan's mind. With Kokuik's help, she managed to reach the Tonatiuh, and there she also realized that the Jade of Return was mostly a made-up story. There, she met and confronted the sage, and she figured out that because he can't touch the pyrophosphorite himself, he created this legend, so that the people would have ventured into Och-Kan, found the pyrophosphorite chunks needed to unlock this elusive artifact, and brought the chunks to the Tonatiuh, slowly and unknowingly unlocking the artifact for the sage, who disposed of them in the end. Because Bona had the last chunk the sage needed, she either kept it or threw it down, preventing the sage from reaching its goal, and because of that, the sage disposed of her in front of Kokuik, that sadly couldn't do anything to save her. Now, I'd like to spend a few words about Mare Jivari. In the Iktomi Spirit-Seeking Scroll event, Citlali told us that the place that became known as Mare Jivari originally was on the westernmost part of Natlan, in a remote location far away from the tribes, and that it was reduced to a wasteland where the ashes of the monsters that the warriors that fought in that place covered the entire battlefield. There, sometimes people would hear bone-chilling cries from the depths that disappear when the whole region periodically gets engulfed by towering flames. There used to be a small settlement near this place because, as we already knew, many adventurers tried to explore the area but most of them died there, but 20 or 30 years ago, people began to notice strange things happening, like an enormous dark creature bigger than a mountain roaming the area, until Mare Jivari suddenly and unexplainably disappeared. It simply vanished and no one knows where it went. And since then, many more people began to populate the area, most likely trying to figure out what happened. Now, I honestly see three inconsistencies here. If Mare Jivari disappeared decades ago, then why would Cyrus tell us that we would eventually explore this domain just like most adventurers normally do? Bennett is said to have been born, or at least to have been found in Mare Jivari, but if it vanished so long ago and no one knows what it is, how did the adventurer from Mondstadt find Bennett? But above all, if the heroes fought against the dark tide that rose on the horizon because of the Cataclysm, why did they fight on the westernmost part of Natlan instead of the easternmost one, so closer to the Girdle of the Sands where the Cataclysm began? That being said, if we look at the map we wove during the event, it looks like the unreleased area of the Grey Volcano of Tolan. The shape is basically the same, and on that map, Mare Jivari used to be where that flame symbol is. As you can see, I had a little bit of fun jumping down from the Tonatiuh and alternating Chasca and Kinich to fly as high as possible and as close as possible to the unreleased area, and this place here behind the volcano might be where Mare Jivari once was. So where is it now? A mysterious gigantic dark monster, so probably an abyss monster, appeared and soon after the place disappeared. Considering that we're in Natlan but also where the abyss is waiting for us, I think Mare Jivari ended up in the Night Kingdom, similarly to the ancient building we can access from the round scrolls of the Masters of the Nightwind. And talking about the Night Kingdom, wasn't it supposed not to be a physical place? Then why can't we just walk into it from the volcano in the middle of the sea? Anyway, something really nice would be that the final battle against the Abyss that we will fight with Mawika in 5.3 will take place in Mare Jivari. You know, everything will come to an end where it all began. Moving on, we really need to talk about Xbalanque. Let's analyze the facts. Neither the Sage nor the Lord of the Night were able to foresee his arrival, so it sounds like he existed outside the fate of Teyvat like a descender, but he's definitely not one considering he received the Gnosis, which is a part of the remains of the third descender that obviously came to Teyvat before Xbalanque became the Archon. Then we were told over and over again that Xbalanque was a true human, that he belonged to true humanity, and even the Sage, who saw the humans as guinea pigs, treated him as an equal. Let's also add the fact that Natlan is the nation with the most unified nation buildings in all of Teyvat. They're on the surface, underground, and even in the Night Kingdom. This, I think, seems to point to two potential but specific conclusions. Xbalanque was either a descendant of a descender, or even better, a primordial human, a descendant of the humans that the Primordial One brought to Teyvat, which would also explain why he isn't recorded by the fate the Heavenly Principles created. When Xbalanque entered the Sacred Flame, a few years later the Scarlet-Eyed youth appeared, and I think he was either Xbalanque's reincarnation or Xbalanque himself. What proves this to me is the strange but familiar feeling Xiuhcoatl had when he was approached by the Scarlet-Eyed youth, and how he easily convinced him to fight for Natlan once again. The second Archon also entered the Sacred Flame, and thousands of years later, another unique and equally extraordinary Archon, Mawika, appeared, right when the Abyss was about to destroy Natlan again. She bore the legendary ancient name Xiuhcoatl, leader, just like Xbalanque and most likely the Scarlet-Eyed youth, and just like them she built a team to fight for Natlan. She also entered the Sacred Flame and came back to life later, when that same Abyss would have completely destroyed Natlan, using the power Xbalanque acquired from Ronova, a power she is capable of using thanks to her unique constitution. All things considered, I think Mawika is most likely still keeping a secret from us, her true identity, which we will witness in version 5.3, when we will be alone with her. Talking about humans, with this world quest in Och-Kan Natlan, we also learned that Natlan had been the cradle of many different kinds of humans. The primordial humans like Xbalanque, the new humans of the Heavenly Principles, the imperfect draconic humans that the Sage created, which are probably also the current humans living in Natlan, and the perfect draconic humans that I would have called reptilians if that name hadn't been used in Enkanomiya already, like Och-Kan, but also, you might have guessed, Bona. Here's the thing, in Moment of Awakening, we stepped into Och-Kan's memories, and we saw what the three parts of Och-Kan witnessed in the past. The memory from his mind, Kokuik, was Bona realizing the truth behind the legend of the Jade of Return. The memory of the dragon body was Och-Kan's meeting with Washa-Clan Uba-Kan, and then we have the memory of the human soul, which is the one human that coincidentally knew where to find the blueprint of Och-Kan Natlan that explained how to reach the Tonatiuh, Taika, the adventurer from the Flower Feather clan. When the Sage told Och-Kan that he could only access the core of Xiuhcoatl because of his Flame Lord's blessing, I got the confirmation I needed. Because not only does Bona bear a red mark on her face, but she was also able to unlock the same core of Xiuhcoatl and free Kokuik when she used the pyrophosphorite on herself, which would have been possible only if she bore the same Flame Lord's blessing Och-Kan had. TLDR, Taika is Och-Kan's humanity and Bona was his daughter. To conclude this video, we need to talk about the Sage of the Stolen Flame and the Golden Entreaties. First, the Traveler has been defined as the chosen of dragons by every single dragon except for Ahau, and it might be related to the fact that we've helped the other dragon sovereigns, or maybe because the Traveler doesn't belong to Teyvat just like them. Anyway, the Sage, who can foresee the future, talked to the Traveler through the past through our little body, and that was a memory of the past because the mural he was looking at was already broken when we got to the Tonatiuh. The Sage talked about the oath he made with Xbalanque at Catastrophe's Edge, so the coexistence between dragons and humans which he needed to conduct his experiments, but also this unknown with Xiuhcoatl that can be activated once the two golden entreaties are pieced together, to scour the entirety of Natlan, removing the Abyss but also the humans. only the perfect draconic humans would survive, and a new civilization would have eventually been born. Considering where Xbalanque and the Sage made the oath, Xiuhcoatl might be a device that will cause, I don't know, maybe the volcano of Tolan to erupt, but truth be told, I don't think it's any device at all. The entreaties are Xiuhcoatl's eyes. Och-Kan told us that we were lied to when we were told that we could use the entreaties to remove the Flame Lord's blessing from our little body, and both Och-Kan and the Sage said that our little body will have to make a choice after the entreaties will have been pieced together. The Sage also told us that we most likely already but unknowingly met him in the present, that he's been using the bodies and identities of the people Och-Kan disposed of, and Och-Kan said that that person, so the Sage, was the one who pointed us toward the first entreaty, meaning that Manku from the Saurian's Relics Association, but also the guy with the same name as the hero who died by Och-Kan's Butcher's Blade, is the Sage disguised as a human, who made sure that we would retrieve both golden entreaties. So what's his goal? Well, this is actually a theory I've shared quite a few times already, but I think that activating Xiuhcoatl will turn our little body into the new phlogiston sovereign, and the choice it will have to make will be to either side with the dragons and destroy the entirety of Natlan as the Sage wants, or to side with humanity and become a sovereign that loves the humans, like Neuvillette for example. You know, kinda like how Xbalanque's Jiring turned into a good dragon with the help of the Traveler and the friends he made along the way. And that's it, I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, and if you're interested in Genshin Impact Theory videos, consider subscribing. My next video will definitely be minute about Genesis and Structure Theory, and then after 5.3 I will make the Paimon/Sasmon video I previously talked about. Once Amphorius is finally released, I will definitely start making Star Rail videos again, and in January I will make a video about Wuthering Waves. Specifically, I will cry at every wrong Italian pronunciation we will find in a new region, Rinascita. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, over and out.